When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea, and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. Acts 27:27 through 41. So according to the rest of Luke's account, the Roman soldiers wanted to kill the prisoners so that they couldn't escape in all the chaos. But Julius, wanting to spare Paul's life, said no. He ordered everyone to jump overboard and swim for it. So they did. All 276 people on board. And so, Paul's promise of everyone escaping and surviving came true. And they one by one washed ashore on the island of Malta. This is the beautiful island of Malta. Malta is part of a small archipelago in the Mediterranean Sea about 58 miles south of Italy. The island is about 17 miles long and 9 miles wide, the largest of the three main islands in the archipelago of Malta, Gozo, and Comino. This large plateau in the center of Malta has been home to the island's main settlement for centuries. Now known as Medina, the site is considered one of the best preserved examples of a walled medieval city in all of Europe. The show's drive-through history, but I'm not partial to cars. People have lived on the island of Malta for thousands of years, as evidenced by large stone temples and carved stone reliefs with intricate designs. About the 8th century BC, the Phoenicians settled here, and they brought advances such as metallurgy and writing. The Phoenicians established their main city up on this large plateau in the middle of the island. They considered this location to be a place of refuge because it was naturally defensible. In fact, the ancient name for the island is derived from the Phoenician word Melita, which means refuge. During the Roman period, Malta was part of the Roman province of Sicily. The name of this main city in the center of the island was Latinized to Melite, and it was considered the Roman capital of the Maltese Islands. My next stop in Malta is Marsa, the main harbor on the island during the Roman period. It's about 7.5 miles from here, so there's no way I'm riding behind Gaseous Maximus. This is a 1964 Volkswagen Beetle. It's got a 40 horsepower air-cooled engine out back. And the gas tank is up here in the front. That's the front trunk. Now the steering wheel is on the right because Malta was part of the British Empire when people started driving cars here.
It's the way you make me feel. You're the luckiest one. I'm so lucky.
The view from the driver's seat is about as basic as it gets. And that smell, very Volkswagen-y. And that happy mechanical sound of that air-cooled 4-cylinder engine. It's like nothing they build today. I made it to the ancient harbor of Marsa. Today, this awesome place is known as the Grand Harbor or the Ports of Valletta. According to ancient sources, it was here that Roman ships would spend the winter when docked here at Malta. Archaeologists have now discovered all sorts of seafaring gear, large storehouses, cisterns, Roman pottery, and Greek inscriptions all around the harbor area. Now, during the Roman period, a temple of Juno rose above the harbor and served as the primary landmark for experienced sailors on the Mediterranean Sea. Today, the Fort of St. Angelo, which was originally built during the medieval period, has replaced the Temple of Juno as the primary landmark on the shoreline. Yo ho ho, a pirate's life for me. Or not. Now, the main city of Malta is now considered to be the beautiful city of Valletta, right here on the coast. You can see why this city has been used in countless movies. Now let's take a drive to another part of the island and continue the story of Paul's shipwreck in 59 AD. According to tradition, the site of Paul's shipwreck is usually placed here on the north shore of the island, about 9 miles northwest of Valletta. Now, the antiquity of the tradition is difficult to trace, but this location has been known as St. Paul's Bay since about the 12th century. There are geographical and historical clues given in the Acts account. The shipwreck site was described as land unrecognizable to the professional sailors, suggesting that it was not a location that ships normally passed on their way to Rome. Beyond the shore, there was a feature like a reef or sandbar at a place, quote, where two seas meet. On the island, there was a bay with a sandy beach. According to some scholars, the description of a bay with a beach and where two seas meet appears to match the geography of St. Paul's Bay. You have this channel of water between the smaller Salmonetta Island and the larger island of Malta that gives the appearance of two seas meeting. Today, the smaller, uninhabited Salmonetta Island is called St. Paul's Island. There's a lone statue of Paul that stood on it since about 1844. You also have a rocky beach here at St. Paul's Bay, along with a shoal where a boat could have easily gotten stuck and battered by the waves. But probably most significantly, the ancient historians Lucian and Josephus describe the normal route of grain freighters from Alexandria to Rome as going past Malta on the eastern side, where the main harbor and various structures, such as the Temple of Juno, were visible. According to Acts 27:39, the sailors on Paul's ship didn't recognize their location. This suggests the possibility of a shipwreck on the rarely traveled north side of the island, where St. Paul's Bay now is. There have been some other possible locations proposed for Paul's shipwreck here on Malta based on geographical analysis and the discovery of ancient Roman anchors. They lack the tradition of St. Paul's Bay, but there are some fascinating theories. We just don't know for sure. Let's return to Luke's account. Once safely on shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us all because it was raining and cold. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put it on the fire, a viper, driven out by the heat, fastened itself on his hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer, for though he escaped from the sea, the goddess Justice has not allowed him to live." But Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected him to swell up and suddenly fall dead, but after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their minds and said he was a god. Acts 28, 1-6. after Paul and the others made it safely to shore, they discovered that the name of the island was Malta, probably after meeting some of the local residents. Now, Luke describes these locals as barbaroi, meaning they didn't speak Greek or Latin. Coins and inscriptions discovered here on Malta reveal that the Punic language and Phoenician script were common and used alongside Greek and Latin. The Punic dialect was descended from Phoenician, which was extremely close to ancient Hebrew. So Paul would have been able to carry on a conversation with them. Returning to Acts, there was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and showed us generous hospitality for 3 days. His father was sick in bed, suffering from fever and dysentery. Paul went in to see him, and after prayer, placed his hands on him and healed him. When this happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. They honored us in many ways, and when we were ready to sail, they furnished us with the supplies we needed. Acts 28, 7-10. After warming themselves by the fire, Paul's group was welcomed for 3 days at the nearby estate of a man named Publius, the chief official of Malta. In Greek, Luke refers to Publius as the first man of the island. According to inscriptions from Malta, this phrase appears to have been a political title used here in the 1st century, which matches Luke's description. Under the governorship of Sicily, Publius would have been the local leader of the island. The estate of Publius would have been a Roman-type villa belonging to a wealthy local man. It appears his family lived on the island with him, including his father, who Paul prayed for and healed of a fever and dysentery. Near ancient Mdina and modern Rabat is a Roman villa, many of the ruins of which are housed here in this local museum. It was called the Domus Romana, and it was occupied between the 1st century BC and the 2nd century AD. It's the best example of a Roman-style estate discovered on Malta from the time of Paul. Now, they've also discovered all sorts of Roman period coins and pottery here. And this statue of Emperor Claudius and another of his daughter Antonia are also housed here at this museum. There's an interesting side note here from Christian history. A man named Publius became the first Christian bishop of Athens in the late 1st century. He was later martyred under the reign of Roman Emperor Trajan in 112 AD. Some scholars believe it's the same Publius that Paul visited here on Malta. After his visit with Publius, Paul stayed on Malta for another 3 months. Let's take a quick drive and check out one more location connected to Paul's time here. Near the center of the island is this cave called St. Paul's Grotto. According to tradition, some say this is where Paul lived during his 3 months here on Malta. Now, the site has only been marked since 1366, so there's no direct connection to the biblical accounts. But this is still a very special place to visit when examining the life and legacy of Paul here on Malta. According to Luke's accounts, many people who had diseases came to Paul to be healed over the course of his 3 months here. As a result, many locals gave Paul's group supplies and honored them. Sources outside the biblical tradition indicate that a Christian church was started here in Malta during Paul's time here. Tradition also tells us that Publius was the first Christian bishop here before moving on to Athens. Over the centuries since Paul, Christianity has become a major part of life here on Malta. Today, there are over 360 churches on the island chain, ranging from ornate cathedrals to neighborhood churches. A saying among the Maltese is that there's a different church to visit for every day of the year. I will definitely be coming back to Malta. What an incredible place to actually see Christian heritage play out over the nearly 2,000 years since that fateful shipwreck in 59 AD.